And welcome everybody to the Huddle. It's KGUN9 streaming sports talk show once a week. We come to you each Tuesday at this time. I'm KGUN9 sports director Jason Barr, joined by our main anchor and former St. Louis Cardinals broadcaster, Pat Parris. Pat, how are you today?
Good, and I'm not going to be a St. Louis sports Cardinals broadcaster again. Did you see they hired Chip Carey?
Did you apply?
Yeah, they're leaving the Braves, going back to St. Louis where he grew up.
Did you apply?
No.
You didn't apply. Okay.
No. Well, then I talked to some people. People came to me. I actually had people on Twitter, very nice, asking me to come back, but no.
Oh, that's the biggest compliment of all.
But I'm not going. I'm not going back. It would have been a great job, but when you got a guy like Chip Carey from the Braves, are you kidding me? To go back to his hometown. Remember, a lot of people may not know this, but of course, Harry Carey started in St. Louis with the Cardinals. They had a falling out. He went to Chicago to be with the Cubs. Brought Budweiser with him too, remember, as a sponsor, and the rest is history. And now the third generation of Carey family broadcasters is going to be doing play-by-play for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, I think a lot of people grew up listening to them because of WGN. And then, of course, when I was growing up, we got TBS. So we got all the Atlanta Braves games.
Yep, that's right.
Before we get to today's topics, I'll tell you what, real quick story, Pat. I was in a fantasy league when I was a kid. This was like, I don't know, 91? And we're doing the draft, right? And so we drafted Charlie Liebrandt, Braves pitcher. And then we drafted one other Braves pitcher. It might have been Smoltz.
Okay.
And then we drafted Steve Avery, and we're looking at each other and we're like, this team was in last place. We can't have three Braves pitchers. It's the worst thing in the world. And sure enough, they went from last to first, but we didn't have Glavine. We didn't have Glavine. It was the ace.
I think they went over a decade of winning that division.
Isn't that incredible? So you never know. All right, let's take a look at today's topics here on the Huddle on this Tuesday. Season 3, episode 2. All right, we're going to talk Arizona UCLA basketball, a little bit about the team's depth and their bench. I'm a little concerned about that, Pat. We'll talk about where they are in the Pac-12 conference. Terry Francona's scooter was stolen. What? Not here in Tucson, in Cleveland. And we're going to do a little NFL championship games, AFC and NFC previews. All right, let's get to the Arizona UCLA recap. Wildcats beat the 5th-ranked team in the country this past weekend. And, Pat, I think what this shows you is this team really gets up for big games, right? They're 5-0 in ranked games this season. They beat the 3 opponents in the holiday tournament, 2 of which were ranked, I believe. Cincinnati wasn't. They beat Tennessee and they beat UCLA. I believe they're 5-0 against.
Yeah, no, they're 5-0. That's exactly right. Yeah. They're 5-0 against.
And so they get up for the big games, which is a good sign going forward. It's not. I mean, we could be here sitting, hey, they're beating just lousy teams, and who have they played? You can't say that, Pat. They're beating the good teams.
Yeah, no, I would agree. They're beating the good teams, but I would say you have to put that USC game in the mix too. That was a heck of a weekend. You beat USC without a lot of effort, without a lot of problems. You beat USC. You had a really tough game against UCLA, and UCLA in a lot of ways dictated how that game unfolded, but U of A adapted to their style. But Tommy Lloyd hit it on the head. Remember last week, and I said it, I didn't think this team was good enough defensively right now. Well, Tommy Lloyd praised them defensively. He said that was that was the best week of defense they played all season long, and I think he's right, against USC, and then a terrific defensive performance against UCLA. That's why they won those 2 games, Jason, and that's why they won those 2 games by kind of controlling things down the stretch. Things got a little frantic at the very end on the pressure and all that with UCLA, but they were never in real jeopardy of losing the game. They were just in jeopardy of making it tighter. But, yeah, I just thought it was a terrific week. Big games. They showed up. Maybe this team's maturing a little bit before our eyes.
Yeah, I do think UCLA missed some shots. You saw Kirk Kriisa there, who said, everybody talks about our offense, but hey, look at our defense was good today. They held UCLA to 31% shooting and only 52 points. And if it weren't for little sloppy plays down the stretch, UCLA would have been in the 40s against Arizona. So, good defense by the Wildcats there. And also possibly that's Henry Visar, who we're going to talk about a little bit later. So we'll get to that a little later, guys. What was I was saying about the defense they were playing? They held UCLA to 31% shooting. They caught UCLA maybe not at their best game on a 14-game winning streak for UCLA. So, great job by Arizona. Yeah, UCLA didn't have their A game. What I was going to say was this was the last trip possibly for UCLA in maybe a very, very long time, because even though they're not going to the Big Ten for a couple more years, they're not scheduled as of now, unless they change it to come next year with the rotation. So that could be UCLA's last visit to McKell Center for a while.
Greg Hansen pointed out, though, the Pac-12 is already talking about blowing up the next year. Why should we set the schedule up, the imbalanced schedule up, when USC and UCLA be gone after next year? So even for next year, they're thinking about just doing away with it and probably doing at least home and home for USC, UCLA here in Tucson, especially UCLA, because the Fox and Fox Sports 1 are going to want that, or in ESPN, they're going to, one of those networks is going to demand it. So
that's right.
There's a good likelihood that we'll play home and home against UCLA next year, one last time at least, and we'll go from there. It would still make sense, even in the new alignment with UCLA being in the Big Ten, that a regional early season regional game between the two powerhouses wouldn't be out of the question either. But that's not going to be home and home, Jason. That's going to be we'll play here 1 year, we'll play there a year or two later.
Yeah, and we've touched on this a little bit before, and we'll touch on this another time. Big mistake I think UCLA making to go to the Big Ten. Really do. I mean, instead of going to Washington and Washington State, now you're going to be going to Michigan and Michigan State, right? You're going to be dealing with bad weather. You're going to be going across the country. The schedule is going to be much tougher. I think USC, which is more football than basketball, they're kind of like Notre Dame. They've got a great brand. I think they'll be okay. I think this is going to be a real tough spot for UCLA going forward. So I hope you're right. I hope they do come back here one more time. It was a non-issue with Mac Etienne with the whole spitting incident from last year, Pat. We didn't have any issues like that. It was interesting. Bruce Pascoe, the writer for the paper, actually asked Tommy Lloyd in the postgame newser about extra police presence. I didn't see that, but Tommy Lloyd said, "Now you're asking me funny questions." So I think they're just happy to get out of there with a win and move forward now and play the Washington schools.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I there was a little bit of a doubt kind of creeping in right last week when we were talking, because they'd come off that Oregon trip where they split with the two Oregon schools and they did not look good against Oregon. And then the week before that, remember, they didn't look good against Washington, but they won, but they lost to Washington State. So the Wildcats kind of needed this turnaround, and not only we have more faith in them, obviously, but I think you've got to have some confidence as a team as well. You've got to find that, it's there. You experience it for the first 2 months of the season, but all of a sudden there's a little adversity, whether Umar Ballo, had a little infection and he wasn't playing at his best. And now we see that we're going to talk about now that the depth of this team might be an injury, or that might be a sickness or an illness there. And suddenly this team wasn't going the direction you wanted them to. Now I feel like they're doing a lot better in that regard. And they have the ability, they have the talent. As Jay Billis points out, one of the most talented teams in the country certainly has an opportunity. Both U of A and UCLA certainly could be a Final Four team.
I'm Jason Barr. That's Pat Parris. We're talking about the Huddle. We're talking on the Huddle here about Arizona men's basketball. Feel free to make a comment if you want. Pat, I'm a little concerned about the Arizona bench, right? Tommy Lloyd, you typically see players and teams go down to 8 players towards the end of the season, tighten the bench. We're only midway through Pac-12 season, and he's already down to 7 guys, right? Henry Vasar's out of the rotation. There you see Dylan Anderson, who he put in for a game or two. Now he's not in. For whatever reason, he's just never trusted Adama Ball. I think Adama Ball should be getting some of Cedric Henderson's minutes at small forward. He doesn't play Adama Ball. It's an ankle injury. Now it's not. I don't know. It's his sophomore season now. I'm concerned that he's already down to 7 guys in the bench here midway through Pac-12 schedule. I don't think that's healthy for this team.
Well, I think it was a we don't know. We don't know if there's health issues. We don't know if there's a illness, that kind of thing. From my perspective, you said before, they got up for the big game. If you say UCLA is the biggest game they played so far, they got up for that big game and they won that big game. And how did they do it? He shortened his bench even further than we expected him to, down to 7 players. That gives you an indication of who he really trusts and who has really earned the minutes at this point, barring injuries or illness that we don't know about. I think when the game is on the line, those are the 7 the big games are on the line. That's the 7 players he's going to go with. Now, I agree. I think Adama Ball is a guy that, remember last year, he had a couple of big threes at UCLA. He's the kind of player that's a bit streaky, but you get him in a rhythm, he can hit a couple of big shots for you, even if it's in limited minutes. I'm not sure why he's not playing, Jason, but he's the one guy I wish we would see a little bit more. There aren't a lot of teams where the Wildcats, when they rest Umar Ballo, that they have to bring in Henry Vasar or they have to bring in Dylan Anderson. There aren't a lot of bigs like that where they can't just go a little bit smaller. So that point I'm not worried about. But again, I'm with you. Adama Ball, I probably would have liked to have seen him a little bit just because you need to keep him engaged, I guess, in the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I think they should be going with 8 guys. I really do. At least 8 and not 7. But he's got reasons behind why he's not doing that. But it's a shame because I think Adama Ball's got a lot of talent and I'd like to see him in that game. Matt, let's look at the Pac-12 standings here for a minute. A week ago, it looked like UCLA was running away with this thing. And while they still might, you've taken a look at the standings here, and UCLA is 2 games ahead of Arizona there, 8-1, 6-3. But the 2 teams do play at Pauley Pavilion on March 6th, the final game of the regular season. And if Arizona is just 1 back, and don't forget Utah, which beat the Wildcats, right? But if Arizona is just 1 back of UCLA going into that game, they would win the Pac-12. So it is still possible for the Wildcats to catch UCLA, but they got to do a lot better against the Washington schools this week than they did last time they played them, right. Even though they were still able to beat the Huskies. It was a 3-point game, and a game a lot of people I think thought was not going to be that close.
Yeah, there's a lot of games to be played before we get to that UCLA game at the end of the season. You got the Washington schools, you still got the Oregon schools coming back here. You got to like to think that you could beat Oregon here in your home court. You've got to play Utah again. At least you get them here. You got to believe that Arizona has a terrific chance to win that game. But you got to take care of business. And first things first is Washington State on Thursday night, and that's a team that you just lost to, 2 weeks ago. And so you've got to get that turned around. What stands out to me when you look at those standings, though, Jason, you get past UCLA and Arizona. Those are the only 2 locks in the tournament right now. Now, the bracketology on ESPN has Arizona State making it in, but it doesn't have Utah, which is kind of odd. Doesn't have USC, which has been a tournament team in the past. So, you could say, oh, I can make an argument for 5 teams making it in the tournament. But right now, there's probably only 2 that are guaranteed and one that's a maybe. And ASU just had a horrible weekend. As good a weekend as Arizona had. They had a horrible weekend against the 2 LA schools.
They got swept. Yeah, they only had 1 loss going in. So that's what the Pac-12 standings look like. And, that's where we stand here almost halfway through the Pac-12 schedule for.
And real quick, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead.
Back to that, the strength of the conference, the issue becomes, we all think Arizona right now will be a 2 seed. That's what all the bracketology gurus are saying. But the net ranking has them at 11 right now. And part of their problem is they're not in the Big 12. They're not, in the Big 10. It's a situation where, yes, they'll get some extra points by beating a Utah and by beating an Arizona State again if they are able to do that. And certainly they get even more if they beat a UCLA at the end of the year on UCLA's court. But right now there's not a lot of ground to make up in that net ranking because they're not playing teams that would help the net ranking. And that's a little bit concerning. And as far as their seeding goes, I know there's not a lot of difference between a 2 and a 3 seed, but you sure would like to be a 2 seed going to the region you really want to be in instead of having to travel.
Yeah, so we got a comment here. Son of Ferrando, what about the Wildcats leaping from 11 to 6? So that's the AP top 25. That's the AP. We still kind of go by that out of habit, but then there's the net rankings, which you were talking about. And yeah, no, other teams, it's really more about just holding serve and having other teams lose, to move up. And teams will get tripped up. That will happen. Yeah, but it's like you said, you got to root for the Pac-12 teams in the early season, kind of like when ASU had that big run.
And you got to root for Tennessee to keep winning because you beat Tennessee. You got to have a Creighton who you beat them early on when they were ranked 10th in the country. They got to keep winning. Those kind of things have to happen. And look at Kansas, Jason. They lost back-to-back games. They almost lost Iowa State to start that week. So they almost lost 3 in a row. They really lost 2 in a row. they dropped down to number 8 in the net rankings is all, because they lost to Kansas State and they beat an Iowa State who are above Arizona in the net rankings right now. So my point is, you got 3 teams in the Big 12 that are ahead of you. And that's how tough that conference, best conference in basketball right now, is the Big 12. If you could just join one other conference, if you're going to merge all these conferences together in basketball, boy, that would be a monster league to be in the Big 12.
Well, one fan who goes to Arizona games occasionally, the manager of the Cleveland Guardians, Terry Francona, unfortunate incident today, Pat. His scooter was stolen. So this is a big story in Cleveland now. He lives here in the off season and likely when he retires. I believe he's 63 and has an open contract with the Guardians right now. He's coming back for next year. He was in Cleveland, though, last week. And his scooter was stolen. So he rides this scooter from his downtown apartment to games, apparently, and waves to fans. I didn't know that, actually. And somebody stole this. So this person's going to get the death penalty when they find him.
He might they might rough him up a little bit if they were finding this guy. Yeah, I think he affectionately calls it the hog.
Why would somebody steal this scooter? I mean, come on.
They must not know whose scooter it is. And it's only, I think he only drives it a couple of blocks in downtown Cleveland from his
It doesn't look like a fancy item. I mean, he's not.
No, he just jumps on it. He waves and gets
the line BMW motorcycle here.
Yeah, no, it's a mode of transportation for him to get around in a little bit of downtown in Cleveland, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything sentimental or anything about that, but we hope we're glad Terry Francona is all right, and we hope he gets his scooter back. And
yes,
and we'll follow up on that. So I saw that today. Thought I'd throw that in there. And of course, the other big sports story really going on, Pat. Of course, the NFL. And here we are with the championship games, and we'll take one at a time. We'll start with the NFC Championship game. And the Eagles are a 2.5-point favorite at home. Here are the record for rookie quarterbacks, and Brock Purdy is a rookie with the 49ers. They're 0-4 in I believe we've got some video of Brock Purdy. They're 0-4 in championship games. 4 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions, and here are the 4 quarterbacks. 1999, Sean King. 2004, that was with Tampa. 2004, Ben Roethlisberger with the Steelers. 2008, Joe Flacco with the Ravens. And 2022, of course, now this year, Brock Purdy. So those are the 4. Those are the, I thought there was one more. Maybe I'm missing one guy. I think Purdy's the 5th. But anyway, rookie quarterbacks have not fared well in the NFC Championship games. Not only do you have one this year, but one going to a tough spot in the link against the Eagles on Sunday.
I'm going to read you off a couple of reasons why I think that this could change this coming
week.
Go
for it.
Christian McCaffrey, heard of him? Deebo Samuel, heard of him? He has got Brandon Ayuk, who's actually a pretty good receiver too. And then maybe the biggest receiver of them all is George Kittle. When you have skilled position players around you like that, you suddenly become the rookie version of a Kurt Warner, bagging groceries. Then all of a sudden he's throwing, to the greatest show on turf. I'm not saying they're the greatest show on turf. What I'm saying is they're one of the best offenses in the NFL right now because of the personnel. And then you add in that great defense that they have. So I think what gives him the opportunity to have some pretty impressive stats as a rookie quarterback so far in the playoffs. He's 2-0 in the playoffs, 7-0 all time as a starting quarterback. He's got those weapons, and he has then kind of grown into that position of managing the game and managing what you do and not making the mistakes. There were some pressure situations in that game last weekend, Jason, and he came through. This wasn't a guy that looked like he was rattled. Obviously out of Perry High School in Gilbert, Iowa State, where my daughter went to. So I'm familiar with Brock Purdy as an Iowa State Cyclone. And I'll tell you what, when he was an Iowa State Cyclone, it was like this all the time. Brock Purdy could be hero. He could be GOAT from one quarter to the next. But something's happened when he's gotten here to the pros and he's taken the next step.
I'll give 2.5 points and take the Eagles. You can take the 2.5 points and take the 49ers.
Okay.
AFC Championship game. Now, the reason that the Bengals are a 2-point favorite, they look good, certainly against the Bills last week, but we got an unknown here with Patrick Mahomes,
right.
the Chiefs quarterback. Apparently, he's got a high ankle sprain. Greg Bradbury makes a comment. Eagles win big at home. Okay, Greg, I'm with you, man. I think the Eagles are going to win this game. I'm going with history here with the rookie quarterback and going with the team that's home, hot, and healthy, the 49ers. All right, back to the
Greg's from Philadelphia. Greg's from Philadelphia, by the way.
That's right. AFC Championship game. We got the Bills and the Chiefs. Yeah, certainly Kansas City's got the home, but Mahomes with the unknown with a high ankle sprain. People who have had high ankle sprains know that is a tough injury. You hear reports he's not walking great this week. I'm sure he's going to give it everything he's got. But if you have the Bengals team playing that well and a Mahomes who's not at 100%, even though Drew Henne looked good in a backup role last week, I think that gives the Bengals the edge next week in the championship game.
Jason, you and I have covered sports a long time.
And that's a confident team, that Bengals team.
It is. You and I have covered sports a long time. We've covered a lot of injuries. We've covered high ankle sprains a lot. And in football, a high ankle sprain, you know what they usually do for the first 2 weeks of a high ankle sprain? Rest. They put you in a boot. They act like it's a broken leg for 2 weeks, and then they begin rehab after that. So for him to come back on it and play tells you a lot about what they were able to do and the pain level that he was able to withstand.
Well, you wonder how much worse he made it, Pat.
But it's the days after that really are the problem. And yeah, and that's the issue is, what is that ankle going to feel like when he goes out there? Now they'll cortisone it up. I mean, he may not feel that leg very much.
Right.
That could be a problem too. I mean, you've got to be able to have some ability to feel and stabilize yourself.
Yeah, I hate to see that. That does so much long-term damage when they do things like that.
It's it's a game about winning right now, so he'll give it a go. I think that you're right about, that's why the point spread right now is at -2 in favor of the Bengals. But the Bengals, give them credit. The Bengals are playing as well as anybody is playing right now. And we always talk about confidence and getting on a roll. What have they won? 9 or 10 games in a row now? I mean, they're just what they did to the Bills. And don't forget on the road. And then don't forget the Monday night game at home against the Bills that was unfortunately, obviously postponed. They looked better than the Bills for that first quarter. I thought they were on their way to a win that night. I just think this team's playing at an extremely high level. Now, the Chiefs, they have been the team for 5 years. We all know that. They are the team to beat every year the last 5 years. They haven't always won the Super Bowl, but they've always been the team you have to really worry about beating. And I think as long as Mahomes is out there performing at an okay level, they've got a chance. But if he is not close to being, 70%, I think Burrow and those guys are going to just probably run away with this.
I'm giving 2 points. I'm going with the Bengals. So I'm going with both favorites here, one road and one home team.
Yeah, I'm going to split that. I'm going Bengals and I'm going with 49ers. But a lot of that 49ers is with my heart. And there's no better way to bet, Jason, than with your heart.
Yeah, 49ers Bengals would set up a rematch of 2 other Super Bowls, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. That's right.
81 and 88.
Yep.
Yes. So 81 was Ken Anderson. They were down 20-0 at halftime against the 49ers. And they scored 3 second-half touchdowns, but the 49ers had two field goals from Ray Wersching still in that second half and won 26-21. 88 was Esiason as quarterback with the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the game in which Montana looked in the stands and said, in the huddle, I see John Candy in the stands.
That's right.
With the huddle going into the final drive and hit John Taylor for the winning touchdown.
That's it.
So, 81 and 88 were those 2 seasons for those Super Bowl historians. The game in Glendale this year. And if San Francisco makes it, we would have a local player. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, I believe, is from Tucson and went to the U of A. I think he went to a couple different high schools, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And went to the U of A,
From a purely, storyline standpoint, if you don't have a dog in the fight, if you don't have a team that you're rooting for of these 4 teams left, the storyline is Brock Purdy. The storyline is, can he get the 49ers through it all? But that would be a heck of a story if he could make it to the Super Bowl and he even win it. But first things first, he's got to figure out a way to beat the Eagles, who have been predominantly the best team I mean, week in and week out, they've been the best team as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy, and he appears to be.
All right, that's a wrap. Hey, Alex Steiniger, thanks for the comment. You got to come up with something a little bit more original, though. We've done it. Something's got to. Oh, can we get Tom Brady on the show?
On the show. Well,
there's an Instagram. We got to wrap this up, Pat. There's an Instagram model who's been trying to get Tom Brady's attention, and has been like messaging, and she went to a couple games and wore his uniform, and it's she's a model. I mean, a very attractive lady. People are speculating on those two. So yeah, good luck with that, Alex. You try and let us know how that goes. And and if you're able to do it. So, but for those who don't know, Alex Steiniger is our Morning Blend host on the Morning Blend on K-Gun.
Yes.
If you get him on the show, you deserve to have him on your show, Morning Blend. And
wouldn't that be a little satellite interview with Tom Brady? Tom, are you going to retire? Are you going to come back? Going to the Raiders? Where are you going, Tom?
We'll take a snippet out of that. All right, Pat, thank you so much. That does it for the Huddle for this week. We got to a bunch of cool things here. Thanks everybody for commenting in and watching and listening in on the live version, and we'll be on OTT for the next week, I believe. For Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr. This has been the Huddle, KGUN 9 streaming sports talk show. We'll be right back here next week, same time. Thanks, everybody.